Let's talk about standing. Oftentimes, when people are dealing with sciatica pain, hip pain, knee pain, or even foot pain, they're often saying, why am I experiencing this when I am standing? Or what is the best way to stand? Another way to think about it is, what is the best posture should I be assuming when I am standing up, either for long periods of time or short periods of time? What I'm going to be describing to you is actually going to be what I call the ideal position. But the ideal position does not necessarily mean that it is the most perfect position. And that also means that we need to make sure that we're having variety from position to position, because the majority of the pain that we're experiencing is the body's request saying to you, I need to make a change. And so standing itself is going to be a dynamic position where you're going to be focusing on, okay, how am I moving or positioning myself, while also a passive activity, because there is going to be various different positions that you'll assume that are going to be more energy efficient. And so focusing on the optimal standing position and being able to go in and out of this optimal standing position is going to allow us to reduce tightness, reduce pain, but also correct some of those things that we've been probably having issues with. And I like to start from the bottom, aka our feet. It's our connection to the floor, and then work our way up. Now, as you can see, with my foot, I have my heel, outer ball, and the ball of my foot. Ideally, you want to be able to distribute your weight on your heel, outside of your heel, and the ball of your foot. You're creating this triangular shape of pressure. Now, what a lot of people do when they're standing is that they'll often have their feet turned out excessively wide. So what ends up happening is that the majority of the pressure gets placed on the inner edge of the foot, and that's where you're dealing with stuff like plantar fasciitis, flat feet, and also irritation of the hip and pelvis, because those feet are too turned out. The knees collapse, the arches collapse, and what ends up happening is that it can then translate on over into my back. So the optimal position that I would recommend, especially when we're standing on our feet, is going to be feet facing forward, maybe a little turned out if you need to, with your weight distributed on the heel, outer edge of your foot, and here. And as you can see, my feet are a little dirty, but you can see that the majority of the weight is there. The arch of my foot is actually going to be intact. And if you are dealing with flat feet, I actually challenge you to be able to put the weight a little bit more on the outside and see what happens to the arches of your feet as you're doing that. From there, let's talk about our knee position. Okay, so if we are continuously locking our knees out like this, it puts a lot of pressure on the knees. It can be uncomfortable, but I'm also not telling you to keep those knees bent. You can go knees to hyperextend to slightly, not even slightly bent, I call it ungluing. So they're straight, but they're not locked. They're also not bent at the same time. The next part is our pelvis and our back. And how do we do this? Now, you'll often hear this concept of sway back. They call it hyperlordotic posture. Or a lack of lordosis, aka a flat back. So we have sway back and flat back. Now, you maintain those positions long enough, you're going to run into some other issues, each individual to the specific position. And so the key is finding the halfway distance between a super arched and a super rounded, and that's what we're going to call a neutral. And that's actually where we're going to allow also to have our pelvis to be neutral. I want you to think about there's like a table sitting right on top of your hips, and everything should be facing straight up. If you let your butt round backwards, everything's going to fall forward. And the same thing, if you're rolling this way, everything's going to be falling back. So being able to find that hyperlordotic, right, to super flat back, we'll say 50%. Ideally, when you're in that position, a lot of people think, okay, I need to kind of tense my abs. Some people might think, oh, I need to draw my belly button a little bit more. And here's why I would recommend that you hold off on saying, let me go ahead and draw my belly button in, because that's going to create a couple other restrictions. And again, it's this concept of active and passive positioning. And so my biggest recommendation, again, is going from overextended to super rounded, go halfway, and just see what it feels like to be aware in that position. From there, we'll talk about shoulders. Shoulders ideally should be sitting right on top of those hips. So if you're rounded like this and those shoulders are all out of the place, the goal is to be able to say, how can I take my shoulders and have it sit right underneath the hips? And the interesting thing is to look at yourself and see where your hands are in position of your body. If your hands are out in front of you, your hips are probably too far back. Same thing. So being able to have it so that your hands are resting at the level of your pocket, trying to have a straight line between your shoulder, your elbow, your ribs, and your thigh. Last but not least, let's talk about the head. I often see a lot of people when they're like this, they'll kind of have their head forward like this to be able to make sure that they don't fall forward. From here, I want you to take your ears, the crown of your head, and pull it up and towards the sky. Your focal point will go from 30 degrees above the horizon to straight ahead or maybe slightly lower. But what's really interesting is that the moment you bring it down, your head gets straight, your spine gets a little bit straighter as well. Now, it's a pretty big, long explanation. I think this video is probably about 5 or 6 minutes in length. It's a lot of things to think about when you're standing, especially trying to do something such as cooking or something like that. And so here are the major components that you should be focusing on when standing. Weight. Outer edges of your feet. Take your hips. Think about setting your hips back a little bit and think about creating a straight line between your ears, your shoulders, your hips, your knees, and your toes. If you can think straight line, don't worry about trying to tense anything up. Think straight line. It allows you to stand up nice and tall. If you're having issues, look at yourself in the mirror. And I'm not expecting you to hold this position 24/7. Only spend 1 to 3 minutes every time you're standing up being a little bit more conscious of your posture. You are going to start to notice, oh, I spend a little bit more time in this super lordotic position. Let me go ahead and just back off a little bit by being able to say, let me reposition. Let's create a straight line. Think about more of a shape rather than let me contract a specific muscle. And I guarantee that you're actually going to start feeling a lot better. Your sciatica pain is going to go down, as well as if you're having flat feet, the arches of your feet will come back.